It is time for us to hit social media for our hashtag segment. For that, we'd like to welcome in Megan Brantley, the VP of Research at LikeFolio.com. And good morning to you, Megan. I have a quick question for you because with everything going on, this is actually a great time to kind of revisit what we've been doing for the last few weeks, which is taking a look both at your fear index and then also just general, excitement and mentions around the coronavirus in general.
Yeah, we track the coronavirus and we've been tracking the coronavirus for some time now. And, last time we talked, you asked me, you're like, what is the scale of this? What is the significance of this trend in comparison to other trends you track? And I didn't have an answer on the spot, but just to give some scale. So we track over 200,000, unique phrases of consumers talking about things. And coronavirus was the top mention, right? This is the top mention. It's the one that gets the most hits. So just for scale, that's pretty significant because we're listening for a lot of things. I think that what you're seeing right here, this is our fear index. And so this is mentions, of investors that are indicating some type of negative sentiment. It really indicates volatility as well. You can see the highest daily spike other than this coronavirus season, I guess you could say, was the day that the Dow dropped so much in 2018. So I think that, this is something that we're definitely, watching. Obviously, I don't think it's any news that investors have been talking about the markets a lot lately. You can see that yesterday was the highest fear index daily data or daily volume level that we've recorded since the corona fears kind of started to be in play.
Interesting, Megan, but I want to know of your data. Does the data ramp up into an event or does it react to the event? How does your data come on the calendar, right? Did you see a rising fear kind of crescendoing? What's that word I'm looking for? You know what I mean? Going higher
I know what you're
into
talking
that
about.
event?
Yeah, the buildup, that's definitely something that's why we're watching this, because we're watching for that ramp up. But honestly, it tends to be pretty hand in hand with what's going on that day. So really, this correlates highly with the VIX if you look at that. And so it's not surprising that yesterday the mentions were so high on our fear index. But there's not an extreme lead time for sure.
Yeah, and it does, like you said, I was going to say that it looks like it almost correlates 1-to-1, at least in this move with the VIX in terms of some of the action we've seen there. But let's talk some coronavirus for a second. Obviously, it's the most talked about trend that you have right now. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. No. But are you seeing any relenting on this? Is it picking up steam as things are a little bit more at home now here in the U.S. and there's more talks about it here in the U.S.? Obviously, NBA shutting down its season, all the other major sports following, March Madness canceled. Disneyland, Disney World closed. Is that added, a pile-on effect in some of this mentioning?
Yeah, for sure. Yesterday, the mention volume that we recorded was the highest that we've recorded since we've started tracking. You can kind of see this uptick. It almost dwarfs the other days. We thought that 400,000 mentions was a lot, and then we recorded over 1 million after midnight last night. And so that was, that's a pretty significant jump. I think the last 7 days are 95% higher than the prior week. So this is obviously something that's building. But as you mentioned, there's been so much in the news. There's been so much unfolding with events canceling and really everybody starting to kind of shut down and kind of wait to see what's going to happen. I think that there's still so much of an unknown factor. And, we're definitely seeing that in our mentions. We're also seeing, increasing people actually behaviorally acting on these virus warnings. So people are actually canceling their travel. The percentage of mentions related to these behavior changes that people are taking is increasing versus just talking about the virus in general. And so that's definitely something that we're going to be watching moving forward to see, okay, if people are canceling travel, they're not watching March Madness, they're not going to Disney World. So what are they going to do instead? And so, we're watching companies and watching for strong consumer demand and strong consumer sentiment throughout this to see, where some opportunities could be.
Megan, not real surprising that this is the peak kind of week, right? I mean, with everything that's hit. But what are you looking for in terms of the tone change? Just less coming from this number or other positive numbers coming up? Is there some relationship that you guys look for? Or are you looking for purely a fear index coming down?
We're watching for both. I think that it'll be really significant when that fear index does start to come down. I also think that it will be significant when those mentions start to level off. We're also looking really targeted into other behaviors, other things that consumers could be doing. So are they ordering more food delivery? Are they streaming more? Are they playing more video games? What are these different things that they're doing? Because people are still going to go on living their lives, right? So we're kind of, trying to find those opportunities, and also taking a look at companies where we still see people who are talking, and especially in regard to sentiment and demand, that they still, want to buy these products. That's something long term to keep an eye on, to see if any behavioral changes start moving the needles for companies long term.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're looking for that too, and that's maybe something we revisit next week. Is
sure.
What are these second, third, fourth order effects? Where are people going to go to keep themselves busy if there is some type of quarantine situation, or all these events being canceled in general? I would assume that you just had up the travel plans being canceled.
Yeah.
I'm sure this kind of ramp up that we've seen hasn't even been out of people doing it out of fear. It's been out of the fact that what they were going to go to isn't open anymore, or the event's canceled. So my question to you, though, and this is again maybe something we'll have to revisit next week, is you've tracked a ton of these trends. You said this one is on record, the most, at least right now. But when you see things like this that get such, I don't know a better term, so I'm going to say viral treatment in terms of how people are responding to it, at what point does it kind of just lose its kind of allure, and it kind of just, it isn't as interesting anymore? People aren't talking about it anymore because it just becomes, it is what it is in a way. And I don't want to trivialize this disease or coronavirus or the impact that it's having, but at some point, don't you expect the mentions to come down even if the situation hasn't fully improved?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we're watching for. We're waiting for that top out. I don't think it's surprising that we haven't, with all of the events that occurred this week, that hasn't occurred yet, but it's definitely something that we're going to watch for short term to see, okay, at what point are consumers kind of like dying down and living less in fear and more just living their life. Maybe it's a little bit different in the short term, but where are those opportunities and what are they doing instead? I think the fear index is really helpful, just to help highlight any potential volatility. But, it's important to look at both of these things. But as you mentioned, there is a sense of virality to this. This is pretty unprecedented in our data. This is something that, we don't see very often. So we're definitely watching to say, how long can this go on? There are just so many unknowns.
One thing for sure is it does look to be even almost catching velocity still. It doesn't look like it's decelerating in terms of the growth of the mentions. Right. So I don't think it's safe to say that we have reached our peak, or at least at the current peak, but doesn't mean it can't go higher. And I'm assuming if we look at this next week, then we might even see a higher peak over the weekend at some point. But Megan, we're out of time. Great stuff as always, and we'll revisit with you next week.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great weekend.